Government. A country is not complete
Samurai
without
sword on
government.
my back. You don't know how to act,
Government.
baby.
The
You should
political
relax,
system by which a country or community
baby. You
is
should
administered
relax.
and regulated.
Just kidding.
A system of social control under which the right to make laws and the right to enforce them is vested in a particular group in society.
Stop,
About
stop,
5,000
stop,
years
stop,
ago,
stop.
the first small city-states appeared. By the 3rd to 2nd millennium of before
Stop,
Christ,
stop,
some of these
stop,
had
stop.
developed into larger
Stop,
governed
stop,
areas
stop,
like
stop,
Sumer,
stop.
ancient Egypt,
Stop,
the Indus
stop,
Valley
stop,
Civilization,
stop, stop,
and Yellow
stop.
River Civilization.
Stop, stop,
Egypt and government
stop,
history.
stop, stop.
Government and religion
Stop,
were
stop,
insurable
stop.
in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh was the head of the state and the divine representative of gods and earth. Religion and government were further cited through the construction of temples, the creation of laws, taxation, the organization labor, trade with neighbors, and the defense of the country's interests. Ancient Chinese ruler. Ancient China had monarchy, government headed by an emperor and a royal family. Chinese rulers, also called monarchs, based their government on the Confucian model, which taught that the ruler was a virtuous man who led an example. Starting at the end of the 17th century, the prevalence of republic forms of government grew. The Glorious Revolution in England, the American Revolution, and the French Revolution contributed to the growth of representative forms of government. The Soviet Union was the first large country to have a communist government. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, liberal democracy has become an even more prevalent form of government. Glorious Revolution. The Glorious Revolution, also called the Revolution of 1688, and the Bloodless Revolution took place from 1688 to 1689 in England. It involved the overthrow of the Catholic James II, who was replaced by his Protestant daughter Mary and her Dutch husband William of Orange. Motives for the revolution were complex and included both political and religious concerns. The event ultimately changed now how England was governed, leaving parliament and more planning seats for the beginning of a political democracy. American Revolution. The American Revolution was ideological and political revolution that occurred in British America between 1765 and 1791. The Americans in the 13 colonies formed independent states that defeated the British and the American Revolutionary War, gaining independence from the British Crown and establishing the United States of America, the first modern constitutional liberal democracy. French Revolution. The French Revolution was a period of major social upheaval that began in 1787 and ended in 1799. It sought to completely change the relationship between the rulers and those they governed to redefine the nature of political power. Soviet Union. Communist Party of the Soviet Union, major political party of Russia and the Soviet Union from the Russian Revolution of 1917 to 1991. It arose from the Bolshevik wing of the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party from 1980 to 1980s. One of the type of the government is anarchy government. Anarchy government. Anarchy, derived from a Greek word meaning having no ruler, is a belief system that rejects governmental authority in favor of self-governing or community consensus that has become a synonym for chaos and the breakdown of civil order. Individualist anarchists believe in the freedom of the self and oppose the authority of government, which social anarchists believe that political power and resources should be shared equally by all in a community. Most anarchists fall on the far left end of the political spectrum. Different types of anarchism include anarchist communism, anarchist socialism, green anarchism, and crypto-anarchism. Critics of anarchism contend that all realistic, idealistic, and potentially chaotic. Anarchy. Anarchy is a society being freely constituted without authorities or governing body. It may also refer to the society or group of people that entirely rejects the set of hierarchy. Anarchy was first used in English in 1539, meaning an absence of government. Oligarchy government. Oligarchy governed by the few, especially despotic power exercised by small and privileged group for corrupt or selfish purposes. Another factor for oligarchy government. Oligarchies in which members of the ruling group who are wealthy or exercise their power through their wealth are known as plutocracies. Aristotle used the term oligarchia to designate the rule of the few when it was exercised not by the best but by the bad person unjustly. In this sense, oligarchy is the base from all aristocracy, which denotes government by the few, in which power is vested in the best individuals. Most classic oligarchies have resulted when governing elites were recruited specially from a ruling caste, a hereditary social grouping. This is set apart from the rest of society by religion, kinship, economic status, prestige, or even language. Such elites tend to exercise power in the interest of their own class. Dictatorial government. Adolf Hitler was an Austrian-born German politician who was the dictator of Germany from 1933 until his death in 1945. He rose to power as the leader of the Nazi Party, becoming the Chancellor in 1933 and then assuming the title of Führer and Reichskanzler in 1934. A dictatorship is a form of government characterized by a single leader or the dictator or group of leaders that hold government power, promise to the people, and little or no toleration for political pluralism or independent media. In most dictatorships, the country's constitution promises citizen rights and the freedom to free and democratic elections. Sometimes it is also mentioned that all these
Samurai sword.
aforementioned rights will be granted to the people,
Don't
but
know how
this
to
is not
act.
always the case.
Baby, should relax.
With the advent
Baby,
of
should
19th and
relapse.
20th centuries,
Just kidding.
dictatorship and constitutional democracies emerged as the world's two major forms of government, gradually eliminating monarchies with significant political power, the most widespread form of government in the pre-industrial era.
Stop, 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 stop,
Democratic
stop.
government. A type and form of
Stop,
government in
stop,
which people
stop,
choose
stop,
leaders by
stop.
voting official
Stop,
leaders.
stop, 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 stop.
An organization or situation in which everyone is treated equally and has equal rights. Literally, ruled by the people. The term derived from the Greek demokratia, which coined from the demos means people and kratos means rule. In the middle of the 15th century before Christ era to denote the political system then existing in some Greek city-states, notably as Athens. Democracy. Democracy means rule by the people. The name is used to different forms of government where the people can take part in the decision that affect the way their community is run. This is usually called direct democracy. The people elect their leaders. These leaders take this decision about laws. Three branches of government in the Philippines. The Philippines is a republic with a presidential form of government wherein power is equally divided among its three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. Executive. Executive. The president and vice president are elected separately by national popular vote. The vice president is first in line to the succession if the president resigns, is removed after impeachment, or dies. The vice president is usually, though not always, a member of the president cabinet. If there is a vacancy in the position of vice president, the president will appoint any member of the Congress, usually a party member, as the new vice president. Our new current president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, and vice president, Lenny G. Robredo. Legislative. The legislative power is vested in the Congress of the Philippines, which consists of the Senate of the Philippines and the House of Representatives. The upper house is located in Pasay, while the lower house is located in the Quezon City. Both are in Metro Manila. The district and the sector representative are elected for a term of 3 years. They can be re-elected, but they may not run for a fourth consecutive terms. Senators are elected to a term of 6 years. They can be re-elected, but may not run for a third consecutive term. The House of Representatives may opt to pass for a vacancy of legislative seat which lead to a special election. House of Representatives was established in 1902. Judicial. The judicial power is vested in the Supreme Court of the Philippines and lower court established by law. Judicial. The Supreme Court, which has a Chief Justice at its head and 14 associate justices, occupies the highest tier of the judiciary. The justices serve until the age of 70. Supreme Court Justice. Longtime Supreme Court official Jose Miguel Marquez is the newest magistrate to be appointed by President Rodrigo Duterte, an official conferred on Tuesday. President of the Philippines. President of the Philippines is the head of state and the head of government of the Philippines. The President leads the executive branch of the Philippine government and is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The President is directly elected by the people and is one of only two nationally elected executive officials, the other being the Vice President of the Philippines. Qualification. Each reach your ultimate dream to become the President of the Philippines? Do not fret because the qualifications are quite simple. Article 7, Section 2 of the 1987 Constitution prescribes that no person may be elected as president unless he possesses the following qualification. Qualification: natural born citizen in the Philippines, registered voter, able to read and write, at least 40 years of age on the day of election, resident of the Philippines for at least 10 years immediately preceding the election. Sagisag ng Pangulo ng Pilipinas, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, born on March 28, 1945, also known as Digong Rodi, and by initial PRRD, is a Filipino politician who is the 16th incumbent president of the Philippines and the first from Mindanao to hold the office. Vice President of the Philippines is the second highest executive official of the government in the Philippines. After the president, is first in the president line of succession. The vice president is directly elected by the people and it's only one of two national elected executive officials, the other being the president. Qualification: Article 7, Section 3 of the Constitution mandates that the Vice President must bear the same qualification as the President, which means must be qualification: a natural-born citizen of the Philippines, a registered voter, able to read and write, at least 40 years of age on the day of election, and a resident of the Philippines for at least 10 years immediately preceding such election. Maria Leonor Leni Gerona Robredo is a Filipino lawyer, politician, and social activist who is the 14th and incumbent Vice President of the Philippines. Robredo was the wife and the late Interior Secretary, Jessie Robredo. Senators. Senators. The Senate of the Philippines is the upper house of Congress, the bicameral legislature of the Philippines. The House Representative is the lower house. Senators. The Senate is composed of 24 senators who are elected at large. The country forms one district in its election, under the plurality at large voting. Senators. Senators serve 6-year terms with a maximum of 2 consecutive terms, with half of the senators elected staggered election every 3 years. Qualification. To qualify for election as a senator, you also have to be natural-born Filipino citizen, a registered voter, a resident of the Philippines for at least 2 years before the day of the election, and at least 35 years old. House of the Representatives. House of the Representatives. The House of Representatives of the Philippines is the lower house of the Congress of the Philippines. Informally known as the Camara, the lower house is usually called Congress, although the term collectively refers to both houses. Qualification. Meanwhile, the Constitution provides for the following criteria to become a member of the House of Representatives. Qualifications. A natural-born citizen of the Philippines, at least 25 years old, is able to read and write, and except the party list representatives, a registered voter and a resident for at least 1 year in the district where he shall be elected. House of Representatives in the Philippines started in 1907. 1987 Constitution.